All right, let's get to our top story, which is Russia. Russia says NATO's counteroffensive has begun. NATO attempts to assassinate Vladimir Putin with a drone strike, and Politico out with my favorite piece of fake propaganda news. We'll get to all of that in a moment. But first, 1 week ago, it was 1 week ago when NATO launched an assassination attempt against Vladimir Putin using a drone attack. Well, they've done it again. I think they're going back to their playbook and wanting to launch it again. So early this morning, NATO launched a series of drones against the Kremlin. Remember, anything that is happening right now in that region, here is that moment when the explosion happens at the top of the Kremlin. We got multiple angles here. This was captured on multiple different cameras from multiple different vantage points overnight, multiple drone strikes, and then confirmed authenticity of all of this. Even the New York Times weighing in and confirming the authenticity of these drone attacks. And think about it. It is a working residence. And the West has loved to talk about how Vladimir Putin even sleeps in his office because he works late. He's like up late and works late. He sleeps through the morning. He doesn't drink any alcohol. He swims like 3 hours a day, but he often sleeps in the residence office there. But he was out of town. He was out of town at the time. He was at his, summer place or whatever, where he was his office away from the Kremlin. So he wasn't injured in this. But this is huge. This is like the White House being attacked. I mean, there's no two ways to slice. This is like the White House coming under attack by a drone strike.
Even though the footage itself doesn't look like there's much of a dent made, but it's still very, it's terrifying when it's inside of a state residence. Well,
you bring up a good point, which is about the damage from this. Now, Russia says that it stopped these, or it foiled these drone attacks.
At least several. That several were due.
Right. So
were on their way.
Now, did they foil them in some sort of an EMP strike where they then kind of fell out of the sky and onto the target and didn't explode? They didn't rain down any ordnance on the target? It's hard to say. It did explode. Did it just explode because that's what electronics do when it collapses? Or was it protected against further damage because they were able to strike it with some sort of EMP attack or something else, some sort of air defense
I think
system?
The number was between 12 and 15. One of those maybe is not going to do that much damage, but 15 of them would be a much different story.
Go ahead, David.
Well, and I was just going to say, I just talked to somebody last week because on RT they had talked about, they got a drone last week that had C4 in it.
Yeah.
So, that they said had attacked the Kremlin. It never made it that far.
Right.
So,
well, no, that's why I said at the top, they tried to do this last week. I mean, they tried to carry this out before. And there was drone strikes today in Crimea. We also had a drone strike today that hit an oil reserve in near the Kerch Bridge. Of course, they blew up the Kerch Bridge, remember, last year. So again, drone attacks today that were taken down. And one of them, of course, struck an oil reserve near there. But a lot of questions. And of course, the U.S. is not saying anything about this. They're saying, don't listen to anything that Russia has to say about this. So Secretary of State Antony Blinken was a part of a panel today with the Washington Post. By the way, separate story. I don't want to derail us here, but Code Pink got up in the middle of this and said free Julian Assange, and it totally disrupted the event, which was a great moment to watch. Anyway, so Secretary of State Blinken was asked about this at this Washington Post event, and he says, I've seen the reports. I can't in any way validate them. We simply don't know, he added. I would take anything coming out of the Kremlin, he says, with a very large shaker of salt. Yeah, because when Antony Blinken was asked about the Nord Stream pipeline, no, we have nothing to do with that. So you can take what Antony Blinken says with more than a grain of salt. I love that
that's rich coming from him.
That's really rich.
Isn't it kind of strange too? If you look at when it hits, it looks like a firework. I mean, it doesn't look like any bigger than a firework. So it's was the campaign to make it look like Russia was attacking themselves to, you know what I mean?
Of course, that's the Western argument. That's the Western argument, right? So.
Oh, I can't wait to see them spin that.
Oh, no. And we're going to get to that, right? The Western argument is that this is a false flag, that Russia attacked itself again. Think about it. Can you imagine the White House doing that?
They're busy attacking their own pipeline.
Right.
And then they're going to get to their own White House.
And then their main fortification, their main office complex, they're going to attack themselves. That's really, really rich. But it's not that case. So that's sort of how the Western media was trying to spin this. This is how even Antony Blinken was trying to spin it. I wouldn't take anything that Russia says with a grain of salt, Well, then we have the advisor to the head of the office of the president of Ukraine actually admitted on Twitter that Ukraine was involved. So maybe they want to get their story straight. He said this on Twitter. I'll translate this. He says, the work can only be that of Ukraine's resistance fighters. Quoting him, he says, the appearance of unknown unmanned aerial vehicles at energy facilities or the territory of the Kremlin can only indicate the underground work of local resistance forces, end quote. So no, not a Russian false flag. It's NATO-led Ukraine. I saw someone in the chat saying, well, was it NATO or was it Ukraine? And remember, everything that Ukraine does is run by NATO. So get it out of your head. Ukraine is not launching any massive offensive that is not directed from Washington, D.C. and the powers that be of NATO. We on this show do not say that Ukraine is launching a spring offensive. It's a NATO-led offensive. They are not
autonomous. They are neither capable nor equipped to do anything of the sort. Now, we've been talking a lot about the spring offensive that the West wants to see in order to continue to support Ukraine. And in Politico this morning even said, the West is feeling like Ukraine's being a little bit cagey by not telling us its plans, which, if you read between the lines, makes it very much apparent that they don't have plans.
Well, and it's also, I'm going to get to that piece because to me that was a pure propaganda piece. Politico is just an extension of the intelligence state anyway. Go ahead, David.
Well, I was going to say, that's kind of the point I was making about how bad it looked. It almost looked like, and like we've shown before, those soldiers were manufacturing their own drones. We know Zelensky has said, we want to do an offensive, but we keep saying no, supposedly. So this could be guys in the front line making these themselves and sending them in there because, like I said, it looked like a firework. It didn't, like if the United States or NATO was going to send something in, you would have thought that it would have done a hell of a lot more damage than that did. But maybe it has to do with what can be picked up on radar. I'm not sure. But
yeah, or if they're just smaller, there's smaller resistance fighters that are like, hey, NATO's providing a lot of these, of course, these drones, these parts. We already know that, right? So, okay, so maybe NATO didn't pull the plug or didn't pull the trigger. Maybe NATO wasn't actually there with the computer system, but all NATO has to do is supply it and then tell them, we don't know what you're going to do with these little toys. We don't know what you're going to do with these drones. We're just supplying them. We don't know what you're going to do with them. Well, anyway, Zelensky was asked about this today. So by the way, Zelensky fled to Finland. It's all very interesting timing, isn't it? He goes to Finland when this is happening and he doesn't leave. He never leaves the country, almost never. Right. So now suddenly he's going to Finland. Anyway, he addressed this and was asked specifically about this. Did you guys launch an assassination attempt against Vladimir Putin? And here's what he had to say. Watch.
We don't attack Putin or Moscow. We fight on our territory. We are defending our villages and cities. We don't have, enough weapon for this. That's why we don't use it anywhere. For us, that is the deficit. We can't spend it. And we didn't attack Putin. We leave it to tribunal.
We leave it to the tribunal. We didn't attack Putin. We don't have the weapons. We don't have any of those materials. I'm here right now in Finland just begging for weapons and NATO's protection. Right. So the Ukrainian post office almost immediately, once again, just like they did with the Kerch Bridge, released a commemorative stamp. This is according to the Kiev Post. So this is from the Kiev Post is reporting this about the Ukrainian post office. Ukrainian Postal Service announced the launch of a new stamp after the night attack on the Kremlin.
Is that a middle finger from that soldier?
It sure looks
can't
like
see.
it.
Can you put it back up?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
looks like
zoom in.
Yeah.
Can this be real?
Or a radio.
Oh, it might be a radio.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm really zooming in, and it looks like a radio.
And look at the fire. That's like way bigger than it even was.
Right.
I mean,
so who knows? And we haven't verified the authenticity of this yet, but within minutes, the Postal Service for Ukraine launched their commemorative stamp on the bombing of the Kerch Bridge. So how do you manage to create a stamp, print it, and then create a large version of it, put in front of the post office so that people can come and take selfies with? Because that's exactly what happened. So in Crimea, and they, of course, at the time labeled it a false flag operation. So they labeled it a false flag, but then the Ukrainian post office
victory lapped it.
Also had a postage stamp ready to go and printed
Yeah.
almost immediately.
But we didn't do it.
But we didn't do it. Russia blew up their own bridge, apparently, just like they attacked their own Kremlin. Okay, which is
it's not like,
hilarious.
I mean, and the thing is, like, that's not something you can do that quick, because that's not like clip art. You just go in and find, oh, here's clip art of this fire behind the Kremlin. Right. Somebody had to design that.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
you had to have a designer with the post office, like, a nighttime attack with drones on the Kremlin. Like, they knew this was coming. A provocation, a clear provocation. So no, but I also don't think Russia would be rash and stupid in this. Are they going to pull some sort of a response? We saw what they did with the Kerch Bridge attack, and of course, and these other responses. Are they trying to provoke them into some sort of large scale response?
But Russia's response to the bridge was to take out key infrastructure, not to attack civilians.
Yeah.
And so, okay.
Took out power plants.
Yeah. You don't like your internet. You don't like your, so who will be hurt by this? Civilians who will then not be able to turn
people
on
couldn't
heaters
people couldn't take the train, people couldn't take the subway,
right?
Like, it was all shut down. I mean, it was all incapacitated. Rail lines coming in from Poland carrying NATO weapons, like all of these infrastructure spots. It's been amazing. And so I don't think Russia will be rash and stupid with this. This is exactly what NATO wants, of course. When you try to carry out an assassination attempt, you hope that there's like a hothead that's going to suddenly launch a massive response attack. But that's why NATO got their guy out of there. So they made sure that Zelensky was not in Ukraine. They got him out of there ahead of time. All of the timing of this, like, if you're calling this a false flag operation, you're an idiot. So they got him out of there ahead of time. He's in Finland, right, which is a new NATO country. So if you want to protect your guy, get him out of Ukraine right now because of what Russia might do in response to you attacking the Kremlin. Put him in Finland, which is where he is. And this is according to the New York Times. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Finland today on a rare trip they call it, outside of the country. So he gave a press conference. I played a bit of that press conference just now.
He did have to pack clothes. So he thought, I'm going to meet another head of state.
Well, he doesn't have to pack any clothes. He wears the same sweatshirt, so he doesn't have to do anything.
Presumably he had to pack underwear. Like, he could dress in a respectful way to meet a head of state.
You would think.
Yes.
You would think. So this was planned, of course, ahead of time. And then we learned this afternoon, according to Spreiter, who's a journalist, immediately after the Kremlin's statements about the attempted use of a drone, Finnish television is now reporting that Zelensky is going to stay in Finland longer than planned.
Oh.
Huh. That's
interesting. Do you guys
interesting.
have any bunkers?
Right. Yeah.
What do you have here?
Do you have any, you have a bed and breakfast I can go to that's a little available right now? Because I'm thinking I'm going to stay here for a lot longer.
It may not be so safe
for me to go.
It's
like having an extended sleepover. Like, when you'd have your friends over, like on Friday night, and you'd be like, Mom, can he stay at Saturday too?
Yeah, can I stay over longer? We're going to go to the movies. Also, we're going to go watch Goonies again. So he's going to be gone for 10 days, according to reports. Now, he was supposed to go to Germany after this, but this was all supposed to be kept quiet. Apparently, Zelensky is pissed that the details of his post-Finland trip are to head to Germany after this, or something in between. We're not exactly sure. But according to reports, Zelensky is pissed. Ukraine, Germany, Kiev sources irritation at the rumors that Zelensky's visit to Berlin leaked.
So, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the Jack Teixeira leak and what is the false flag about
the Pentagon Papers.
The Pentagon Papers that were leaked, and we're finding out these lies that the administration has been telling us about the war. But now it is a very convenient excuse to not tell us things about what Ukraine is up to, not give plans for offensive. In fact, that's what Ukraine said in Politico this morning. It's like, we would give you our plans for this counteroffensive, but we don't trust now that it won't leak after the Jack Teixeira leak. So, we're going to keep this close to the vest. And it's a very good excuse now for the opposite of for them to act even more opaque.
Right. So he's out of the country. He's not there when this spring offensive is arguably beginning right now, according to Russia. Mm-hmm. We'll get to that in a second. But according to reports, he's in Finland. That's going to be extended. Then apparently he's going to go to the Netherlands, perhaps, and then to Germany if that doesn't get canceled. So apparently they're pissed that this leaked about him going to meet with Olaf Scholz in Germany. That part of it might get canceled. But the point is, he's gone for like 10, 12 days out of his country, which he never does. That's it. unless it's a rare occurrence where
Well,
he's
he
flying
spoke to Congress and he spoke
flying
to
Congress.
Parliament.
Most of the time, it's all Zoom calls. But as even the New York Times calls it, a rare visit. A rare visit. And that's the truth. He's been like hunkered down in bunkers inside of Ukraine.
I don't think we can call it rare. He spoke to Congress in Washington, D.C. He went to Parliament in London. He goes where there's money for him.
But most of the time it's Zoom calls. Almost everything else is Zoom.
But now he needs to make a NATO tour because that's his major backing. So, I mean, yeah, we can, I don't think it's all that rare. He's, he wants to be at the Grammys. He would have, these.
Zoom call.
Yes, you're right. Those are
Golden
Zoom calls.
Globe, Zoom call. Anyway, so the U.S. is in talks. It's all convenient because right now the United States is in talks with Finland to put military bases in Finland. 2 military bases, according to Finnish officials. U.S. and Finland are working out a deal that would allow U.S. to establish a military presence in the Nordic country. Well, that was fast. It just joined NATO, and now we want to move some nuclear weapons up there, build some military bases. We have over 750 U.S. military bases around the world. What's a few more among friends? So, according to Russia, at this hour, the offensive has already begun. Ukraine has already started their quote-unquote spring offensive. That was supposed to be the fall offensive that dragged on. Now it's the spring offensive. So, according to the Wagner, head of the Wagner group, this is Yevgeny Prishkin, excuse me. This is the founder of the Russian paramilitary company, the Wagner Group. He says, we see higher activity from any enemy aviation. We see its maximum activity along the perimeter and inside our front. We see the situation in various regions, trains, drones, and so on. So I think it's already started, he said. When will it enter the active phase? I think in the near future, maybe in the next few days. So it's convenient that Zelensky's nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
So, of course, the spring offensive has started. It needed to start because support at home is completely drying up in Washington. Here's warmonger Mike McCall, Congressman Michael McCall, who says that any future support from the United States really depends on this spring offensive. In other words, it's a public relations move, a PR move. They have to launch it now. Listen.
Emery, you're going to see a counteroffensive very soon now that's going to take place. And I think there's going to be a lot riding on the line with this counteroffensive. If Ukraine is successful in the eyes of the American people and the world, I think it will be a game changer for continued support. If they are not, that also will have an impact in a negative way, though. My prediction is they will try to go down and hit the land bridge in Crimea and have a very dramatic, bold strategy that then would push back Russian aggression, possibly then call for a ceasefire, after which we could then maybe have negotiations to finally resolve this.
Oh, okay, so that's what it is. But I love how
That's so condescending. Like the TikTok generation does not have the patience for this war much longer. We need some new memes to share around.
Right. You better do it. You better do it.
Because we're getting kind of bored of this.
Yeah, that's basically what he's saying. But you also pick up at the very beginning, he knows that the offensive is starting. He said it emphatically. I mean, he's literally on the committees that are having these discussions with NATO and with people in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh no, it's starting. It's about to start. So he's like telegraphing that it's about to start. Meanwhile, here's my favorite piece of propaganda. Tell me what you guys think of this. This is Politico this morning. Politico, which is just an extension of the intelligence state. Ukraine withholding counteroffensive details from allies. Kiev is holding close the details of its spring counteroffensive in an attempt to prevent the leak of sensitive information that could compromise its positions on the battlefield, according to 2 European officials who are in touch with the military leaders in that area.
That's rich. So they don't trust us now.
Right.
Like,
they're keeping it from
you guys
us.
are no longer trustworthy.
So part of this piece sounds to me like they are trying to set it up like they're trying to distance what Ukraine is about to do and fail at. Like we're trying to sort of step back from it, being like, we don't know what they're up to. We know everything they are up to. We know every detail of what they are up to. As we've had a number of military experts on our show who've cataloged in great detail how multiple phone calls are happening every day, Our officials are literally there in their offices directing traffic. I mean, nothing that they're doing we don't know about.
That's not how I read it. I read it as Politico saying Ukraine is this big, bad, stone cold killer. And they have this stone cold, ironclad plans. But since we've proven ourselves untrustworthy, they can't share it with us. But they're up to something. Don't you worry about it. Like, they got a plan. I feel like they're building Ukraine up as if Ukraine is leak proof, as if Ukraine is, this prodigy on the battlefield, that kind of thing. Like, oh, you just wait. They've got it. We can't see it because we've been bad. But they're there. I sort of read that. That was my read on it.
My read is just that they're trying to distance themselves, play it up that whatever sort of Ukraine does here in the next few days is going to be a disaster, and it will probably likely fail, and they'll get to sort of distance themselves from it. I don't know. There's a lot of pieces in this Politico piece that I find interesting. So right now, Putin is unharmed, according to sources from Russia. He wasn't even there. Ukraine denied that they were involved in it, but then one of the advisors to the head of the president says it could have only been carried out by Ukrainian resistance forces, so it was. And then the Ukrainian post office releases a new stamp, a commemorative stamp on the attack on the Kremlin. This is a PR move ahead of this whatever spring offensive is about to happen.
Yeah, it could be a bellwether.
Maybe like a morale booster. It reminds me of like the Doolittle raid. It's like, well, we can't really hit Tokyo, but we can maybe get close, so we can just drop some pinpricks. After what happened at Pearl Harbor, we need a morale boost. Because, the American people are wondering, like, how are we going to ever respond to Pearl Harbor? What are we going to do? Doolittle raid. And that's what this kind of felt like, feels like, acts like. I don't know. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.